Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto was exiled and claimed Hinata, Temari, Yugito and the world, Part 3. The world that abandoned Naruto is now beginning to fear him. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's start. Chapter 4, Invasion PT.1. Forest outside of Konoha. North Gate. Naruto vs. Sasuke. Naruto and Sasuke just simply stared at each other, not moving an inch, waiting for the other to start off. Years ago when they fought they knew everything about each other, tactics, the way they thought and their abilities, but now in the present they knew nothing about each other. Well, Sasuke knew Naruto had the ability to use all elements, but that wasn't helpful really. But what was the Rinnegan? What is the Rinnegan? Sasuke asked, wanting to know how he can counter it if it's anything like the Sharingan. Naruto sighed and decided it was only fair he knew. The Rinnegan first appeared in the Rakudo Sennin, the person who gave us chakra. It is said to be the most revered and powerful of all the three great dojutsu, as the Sharingan and Byakugan were a byproduct from the Rinnegan. The Rinnegan is usually characterized by a ripple-like pattern around the pupil, with a grayish-purple iris and sclera. In addition to enabling the user to quickly master various jutsu, the bearer, being me right now, may also use all 6 forms of chakra nature transformation. These are Futon, Kaden, Suiden, Raiden, Doden and Gravity. Should the user be proficient in the Rinnegan, then they can recreate sub-elements. Like the Sharingan and the Byakugan, the Rinnegan also allows the user to see chakra, including otherwise hidden barriers. Sasuke stood in shock at hearing the information. It was more than he thought possible. If anything, it sounded too real to not be the truth, and despite being mortal enemies, he couldn't help but feel a small bit of pride from seeing Naruto turn from the once overconfident dumbass to a calm and collective person who has the power to back up his words. It's quite a shame he had turned out the same way. Well then, Sasuke started off as his black eyes morphed into the blazing red of the Sharingan as the 3 tomes appeared in each eye. I guess I can't underestimate you then. Naruto smirked and put his hand on his kunai pouch. Glad you can see it my way, he said as he crouched slightly. No matter what, I can't slip up. Even though I have the Rinnegan, his Sharingan can counteract it, so I can't depend too much on sight. Sasuke should be able to use genjutsu just by looking in the eyes of someone, but will it affect me? Hell, would I even know? Sasuke too placed his hand on his kunai pouch and repeated Naruto's action. I can't underestimate him, despite what I said when I read the bingo book. Even I know not to take the information lightly. But he said the Rinnegan is like the Sharingan in a way. Does that mean genjutsu won't work on him? I'll have to give it a go soon. Naruto flipped one of his 3-pronged kunai out and swung it at Sasuke, who repeated the action, throwing a regular kunai at Naruto's. However, as both kunai come in contact, Naruto's cut straight through Sasuke's one like a knife would cut through butter. Sasuke looked wide-eyed before he noticed something. Is that chakra enveloping the kunai, and why is it that shape? Sasuke, seeing the danger, only had time to tilt his head out of the way, causing him to get a cut on his cheek, allowing the kunai to pass by. Looking at where the kunai struck, he notices it had cut clean through a tree and split a rock in half that was behind it. Naruto chuckled at Sasuke's wide-eyed expression as he viewed what a single kunai could do. It's amazing what one can do with futon manipulation, is it not? Naruto asked rhetorically. How the hell did you do that? Sasuke demanded as he stared at Naruto's eyes with his Sharingan blazing colored eyes. Naruto shakes his head at the Uchiha's stupidity. Didn't I just tell you? By adding futon to the kunai, I am able to make it so sharp it will cut through anything. That is the greatest advantage of futon chakra. It can cut through anything given the time to train in it. Naruto explained simply. Sasuke snarled at Naruto and shot forward with incredible speed that surprised Naruto greatly. As Sasuke came close, he delivered an uppercut to Naruto, sending him up. Jumping up after him gave Naruto a strong combo to the chest, causing Naruto spit out some blood. Unknown to Sasuke though was that during the combo strike, Naruto had managed to place a Hiraishin seal onto Sasuke's back. Sasuke then watched as Naruto started to fall, acted fast by swinging his foot down on his stomach, forcing Naruto down to the ground. As Sasuke came back down, he yelled, "Shishi Renden," as he slammed down on Naruto with his foot, causing a massive explosion. Sasuke jumped back and looked at the dust cloud with a smirk on his face, believing he had beaten Naruto. Ha, this is as far as you have come, how pathetic. Oh, and why do you say that? Said a voice that was by his ear. Tilting his head slightly, he saw Naruto's face by his. He was unable to speak as he felt a stinging pain in his back as he was sent sailing across the training ground before smashing into a tree. Sasuke looked back to see Naruto's knee bent from the attack he had just received from the blonde. To think such an attack at close range with barely any space could be so powerful for it to send him across the ground. How the hell did you get behind me? Sasuke snarled. Naruto however smiled. When we were up in the air, I placed a Hiraishin seal on you, allowing me to teleport to you whenever I want. My father was a true genius when it came to seals, he could make the impossible possible. He said with a smile while Sasuke sneered. Sasuke slowly stood up and wiped the blood away that was dribbling down his chin. Not bad, Dobi, but you're no match for me. He said arrogantly while Naruto chuckled. Is that so? Then give me everything you've got. Naruto said, goading the Uchiha. Sasuke snarled as he flew through hand seals much faster this time. Kaden, Goryuken no Jutsu. Puffing his cheeks out with air, he suddenly blew out giant dragon made of intense fire that had its mouth open, its teeth bearing down on Naruto as if he was its prey. Holding his hand up in a sign, Naruto called out. Suiden, Suiryuden no Jutsu. A giant dragon of water formed out of thin air before it shot forward, yellow eyes gleaming as it met the fire dragon in the middle, creating an explosion of chakra that shook the earth as steam rose from the epicenter where a crater was now formed. Naruto stared into the smoke, unable to see anything, and started to focus chakra in his stomach before shouting. Futon, Rinkuden. Bringing his fist back, he punched his stomach. A giant bullet of air shot out of his mouth that went soaring at Sasuke, knocking any steam left away. Sasuke, seeing the attack, jumped out of the way, allowing the bullet to pass him where it blew many trees away as it made contact with the forest, making everyone wide-eyed as they viewed the damage. Over a dozen trees had been blown away as well as the ground had been shredded. Sasuke jumped up high in the air and opened his mouth as he called forth his next jutsu. Raiden, Gion. A bolt of lightning was summoned from the black-haired boy's mouth as it shot along the ground, ripping it apart, heading for Naruto, who stood calmly. The lightning soon rose from the ground as it shot towards Naruto's chest, who raised his arm while focusing his gravity element on it. The summoned lightning struck his arm as a purplish shield appeared over it as the lightning pushed against it, but not succeeding. Naruto tilted his arm slightly, which, very much like a mirror would a laser beam, deflected the lightning to strike a tree, piercing it and many others behind it. Sasuke looked on in shock at what he had just seen, which by all rights should be impossible. How did you deflect that with your arm? He demanded, wanting answers. Naruto chuckled and started going through hand seals. I used my gravity element to create a shield of sorts on my arm where I knew the lightning would strike, causing it to be halted, and by tilting my arm the lightning acted like a laser would hit a mirror and reflect in another direction depending on the angle. Naruto explained with a smirk. Finishing his hand seals, Naruto shouted out. Futon, Kami Oroshi. An almighty whirlwind shot from Naruto's hands and hit a shocked Sasuke point blank, blowing him into the forest, tumbling before he came to a stop at a tree. Shit, what was that jutsu? Sasuke thought to himself as he hefted a tree off of him. Stumbling back into the area, black marks started to gather over his skin. Let's take this up a notch. Sasuke pulled his arms out of the sleeves of his white shirt, letting it drop around his waist as his skin turned dark gray with a black four-pointed shuriken mark grew between his eyes. His sclera turned black while his eyes still kept the Sharingan. His hair lengthened without losing its style. Blue venom lipstick seemed to appear on his lips, and gave him hand-shaped wings on his back. Naruto looked at Sasuke, disgusted at what he'd driven himself to. So this is the new you, huh? Using Orochimaru's cursed seal to get the job done. Sasuke snarled at Naruto with full-blown anger. I do whatever it take to get revenge on Itachi, even it means giving up my soul. He shouted angrily. Very well. Naruto spoke in a whisper as they shot towards each other. With Kagura. Kagura was having the time of her life as she swung her Zanpakuto like a mad woman on a mission, cutting, cleaving and generally ripping apart Oto Nin in every sense of the word, leaving them in pieces. I'll have to thank Naruto-kun later for leaving me with such a thrilling role in the battle. She thought with glee as she swung once more. Kagura started spinning her Zanpakuto over her head, causing the wind to pick up harshly while black lightning flickered around her every now again. The wind eventually picked up to the point that rocks were being lifted and the ground being ripped up. Swinging forward she called out, "Shinku Getsue no Orori." A second later 5 typhoons were created from the wind gathered and shot towards the Oto Nin. Kagura listened in glee at the sounds of screaming from the shinobi that were being ripped apart by the typhoons as they moved through the enemy ranks, tearing them apart, limb from limb, pieces by pieces. "Music to my ears," she said with a chuckle. Running forward she went through some hand seals before calling out, "Ikazuki Hakai." Slamming her hands on the ground, lightning flew through her body into the ground and shot along it, breaking it apart while destroying everything it comes in contact with. As the lightning made contact with someone, there was a small spar before an explosion blew. Everyone around that point was blown away or blew up, killing anyone close, while a column of smoke lifted up into the air. Seeing that some people were still alive, she held her Zanpakuto up in the air while raining her chakra output, causing a column of purple chakra to blast into the sky, creating black clouds, while black lightning struck along the clouds while trailing down the column of chakra. "Let's show these fools who they're messing with." "Yes, let's, my Shuju Hikiho." Beni Akatsuki said back to her with equal glee at vaporizing these fools who would dare oppose her partner. As the lightning built up she called out, "Kuroi Getsue no Hitoko." Black streams of lightning soared down from the heavens and struck each shinobi, causing them to cry out in excruciating pain while Kagura just grinned. Moving the Zanpakuto, she made the lightning roar across the battleground, destroying everything it reaches, vaporizing everything to dust just from the intensity of the heat the lightning seemed to generate. Before she could do anything else she heard clapping coming from behind her. Looking around she found someone looking on with an amused smile. He had black hair that reached his shoulders with black eyes that seemed a little too insane. He wore what looked like medical tape wrapped around his entire body, from head to toe, with black shinobi pants, and a black sleeveless trench coat on. But what caught her attention were the swords on his waist. "I take it you liked my performance," she said with a half-amused face at this person who made it look like he could beat her. "Of course, the way you could lightning in such a way is breathtaking. I never have seen someone use black lightning before though," he said with a chuckle. "I'm just that good at what I do," she said with a smirk before turning serious. "So who are you?" The man seemed to smile even more. "Me? Well, my name is Raiga Kurosuke." Seeing her about to talk he interrupted her. "And you are Kagura Ankai, the Shuju Hikiho," he said with a smirk. "Ah, you know me, should I be scared of craped out?" she said with a chuckle while gripping her Zanpakuto tighter. Raiga shrugged as if he didn't care. "You're gonna die anyway, so it doesn't matter," he said casually. Kagura chuckled and moved into a stance. We'll see now, won't we?" she asked rhetorically. Kagura charged forward while looking like a blur to everything else around her, and brought her Zanpakuto down. Raiga, who had drawn his dual swords and crossed them over in an X, effectively blocking the attack. Raiga pushed Kagura back with a heave and kick her inside, which made her block it with her arm, and then she flipped over a strike from his swords. Raiga watched as Kagura back flipped away before he aimed his 2 pike-like swords to the sky, causing the heavens stop rumble with thunder. Using his power over Raiden, both of his swords lit up in electricity before they both shot out 2 large currents of lightning into the sky. Raiga smirked as he called out his jutsu. "Kazuki no Kiba. Let's see you dodge this bitch," he shouted over the noise. "In case you forgot, dipshit, but you're not the only one with control over lightning," she exclaimed as she flicked her Zanpakuto, causing the blade on the scythe to flip upwards to make it look more like a staff with a blade on the end. She then lifted it up to the sky and watched as a large blue bolt of lightning came soaring down at her. As the lightning bolt hit her, it struck the Zanpakuto, at first completely covering it from head to toe before making its way to her, which made her feel a small tingle, but other than that, it felt like it was refilling her chakra. Must be an effect of Beni Akatsuki. Either way, this dipshit doesn't have a clue how my powers work, she thought to herself with a smirk. As the lightning stopped she smirked at Raiga. "Is that it? I told you, lightning doesn't affect me whatsoever," she exclaimed as she brought her Zanpakuto back ready for a swing. Pumping her chakra into it she watched with glee as it suddenly exploded in black lightning before she swung it forward, putting all of her strength into it. "Kuroi Kaminari Kurzento Ha." The black lightning exploded from the scythe as it took on the shape of a crescent along the way, roaring at Raiga while turning the ground to a crisp. Raiga, knowing that attack will hurt, brought his swords up above him while gathering lightning around him and inside him from the swords before he started spinning at an accelerated rate which brought a small tornado around him before he shouted. Raryu no Tatsumaki. The tornado that had been formed was now a large blue dragon of lightning with red eyes. Raiga then mentally commanded the dragon to attack, which sent it towards the crescent wave, grasping it within its mouth, only to find out how futile the attempt was as the crescent wave cut straight through it and made its way towards Raiga, who glared angrily at the fact that his technique was ripped open. As the wave came at him, he gathered lightning through his swords and put them in a cross formation. A second later the wave struck, which started to drag him along the ground until he hit a wall of a building, which was the timing for the wave to explode, sending Raiga through the building, landing in a heap. "Don't tell me that's all you got?" Kagura exclaimed with a feral grin at seeing her handiwork. All of a sudden the building exploded outwards, blowing everything off of it as Raiga stepped out with chakra and lightning shooting out of him. He then placed the hilts of his swords together and started spinning them at high velocity speed before he shouted, "Reigeki no Yoroi." What happened next shocked her, as every single bit of him was cased in blue lightning, not leaving an opening. "Well shit, that wasn't supposed to happen," she muttered before the Lightning Cove red man charged at her. "It's time I kicked for good, you overgrown light bulb," she exclaimed as she ran at him full on. Kurenai vs. Tayuya. Tayuya groaned as she pulled herself out of the building she had been unexpectedly kicked into. She had definitely not expected to be hit so hard from the red-eyed woman. "Fucking bitch, felt like I got hit by that Tsunade bitch of a Hokage." Eventually out, she looked ahead to see the same woman ready for a fight. "How the did you kick that hard?" she said, rubbing her jaw. Kurenai grinned, a very unlike Kurenai grin, and said, "I've been training in my chakra control so that I can gather it at one point and release it all at once, like how Hokage-sama can do it. Unfortunately I haven't completed it yet, but it works for now." Tayuya scowled at the woman, realizing this wouldn't be as easy as she first thought. Fortunately she had upped her training in taijutsu herself and became very proficient in the art, as well as kenjutsu, something had to learn after gaining her katana. "Well then, this won't be as boring as I thought it would be," she said, unsheathing her katana. By bending it on an angle she was able to get a light on it to reflect into Kurenai's eyes, temporarily blinding her, allowing her to shoot forward. When her sight returned to her a second later, Kurenai found a blade heading for her neckline. Acting quickly she brought her kunai up to block the sword strike, but to her shock she was pushed several feet. Tayuya brought her foot up to kick Kurenai once she stopped, only for it to be blocked by the Raven Head's arm, who then grabbed her wrist and twisted it, but Tayuya's flexibility allowed her to unwind herself and flip over the woman. Tayuya, now facing Kurenai's back, aimed a kick and successfully made contact, sending the woman flying, but due to her own flexibility, Kurenai was able to place her hand on the ground and flipping herself upright. Tayuya put her hand into a seal and called out, "Tsuchi Bunshin no Jutsu." Mud gathered from the ground as it formed into an identical copy before they both went through hand seals. Futon. Daitapa. Kaiten. Gokaku no Jutsu. Both jutsu merged halfway, causing it enlarge by at least 3 times its size due to the wind augmenting the fireball, making an almost mini-sized sun that was sent barreling towards Kurenai. Kurenai, thinking hastily, flew through hand seals before slamming the ground. Sweden. Heron Bansho. All of a sudden a high torrent of water fell from the sky, crashing into the fireball, extinguishing it after some time, causing the area to be filled with steam. Holding her palm facing forward, Kurenai started to gather the water from the moisture in the air and whispered, "Sweden. Suihachi." A high stream pressured jet of water shot from her hand right through the steam, blowing it away and on course for Tayuya. Tayuya, seeing the water coming at her, dove out of the way only to witness the jet of water cut through the building that was behind her like a knife through butter. Jumping away from the water that now seemed to follow her, she turned to face Kurenai and called out her own jutsu. Futon. Repusho. Just like with Kurenai, a high-pressured gale force wind blew from Tayuya's hand straight at Kurenai, who was unable to cancel her jutsu in time and was therefore blown back from the blow, landing in a heap. Getting up from the ground with a groan as her arm and hand had been cut from the fall as well as her forehead, she looked up to see the red head walking towards her. Flipping up, she threw some shuriken and kunai at her, only for her to bat them away with her katana. "Damn, she's good with that. If I want to have a better chance, I need my own katana. It must be horrible to be on the edge of defeat and not know it," Tayuya said with a smirk as she stopped a good distance from Kurenai. "You think you have me beat?" It's your overconfidence that will get you killed. Kurenai said with a frown. Tayuya chuckled as she grasped her katana, causing the wind to pick up in the area. I'm not overconfident about anything, I'm just telling it as it is. The wind picked up more ferociously, making Kurenai have to put her arm up to block it from getting to her eyes. All of a sudden the wind stopped making a single sound before Tayuya said. Futobase, Tachika's. Blow it away, earth-severing wind. A second later an explosion of wind ripped out of Tayuya, blowing everything apart, even causing Kurenai to stumble back a bit. The wind started to shrink in as it gathered around Tayuya and her newly transformed sword, which had gone from a katana to a combat knife with a black guard and small ring on the hilt's blunt edge. You have a Zanpakuto? Kurenai asked in shock. Tayuya chuckled and started spinning the knife on her finger. Yep, just like your boy back there, and maybe that other redhead. I didn't get a good feel of her weapon, but that doesn't matter, you're going to die here. Tayuya stopped spinning the knife and grasped it in her hand and brought wind around it before swinging forward, creating what looked like two whips of wind to cut through the floor either side of Kurenai, ripping chunks out of the ground. What was that? Kurenai gasped out in shock at the display of power. Tachika's is a wind-based Zanpakuto. It allows me to create and release transparent blades of wind which cut enemies from a distance. And what's better is that, there is no limit to the amount. Now prepare to die. Tayuya shouted out as she swung the knife multiple of times, sending waves of wind at Kurenai, who for the first time in her life felt true fear rush through her blood. No, can't die here, there's so much I have to do, so much to say. I wanted to be with Naruto, help him rebuild his clan. Be there for him when he needed, help Anko out with her problems, be the sister she never had. I can't die here, I won't die here. She screamed to herself in her head. And if by some miracle, everything stopped in place, completely frozen before she blacked out. Mindscape. Waking up groggily, she couldn't tell where she was when all of a sudden everything came back to her, causing her to jump in haste and look around for the redhead, when instead of seeing Konoha and fighting going on, she found herself stood in what looked like a traditional Japanese garden, cherry blossom trees all in a ring around a good-sized field of grass with a large pond in the center with a bird pool in the center. All in all, it looked beautiful to her. But the question she now wanted to know was what the hell happened. You're here at last. A feminine voice that sounded calm and peaceful spoke out. Looking around, she spotted a woman by the pond looking at her, only to turn back to the pond as if watching her. The woman was, for one thing, beautiful. She wore an elegant blue kimono that looked like it would be worn in a formal gathering. She had an impressive bust that matched her own, and a gentle tanned face that screamed beautiful. Her eyes were pink, and she had black hair like her own but tied back while wearing red lipstick. Where am I? Kurenai asked the woman. The woman seemed to ignore her and motioned for her to come over, which she did reluctantly. The woman that was now stood beside her spoke up. Look into the pond and tell me what you see. Kurenai looked into the pond and could see the fight that had just happened leading up to the point she was going to die, completely shocking her. Do you know why you are going to die? She asked Kurenai, who blinked at the question. Because I'm weaker than her. She said simply, causing the woman to chuckle. God heavens no, you're much stronger than you think. How do you think you ended up here? She asked rhetorically. No, the reason you will die is because you fear death, fear of making a mistake in the time of need, and fear taking chances. What does that have to do with anything? She asked with a confused frown. If you fear death, then you will die sooner than later. With your fear of dying, it caused you to freeze up when those blades of wind were coming at you. Had you have had no fear, you would be able to think fast and use a technique to defend yourself, or at least lessen the blow. Because of your of making a mistake, it slows down your brain as it tries to rationalize for what to do. You tend to overthink situations, which can only end up even worse. And by fearing taking chances, it stops you from getting to where you want to be, stopping all actions that you could take to make the situation at hand better. Take Naruto for example. If you had no fear of chances, you would have had with him already. The woman explained before she started to smirk at the end while Kurenai blushed. Kurenai sighed and closed her eyes in thought. When she thought about it, the only reason she feared death was because she lost her father and mother fighting the Kyuubi 18 years ago. Then as she grew older, more people seemed to die until it led to Asuma, one of her best friends, who stuck by her. That was when it struck worse. It was also the same with making a mistake, as she didn't want to end up like Asuma and her parents. Opening her eyes, they fell on the pond as she saw her terrified face as the blades were coming in fast and couldn't believe how stupid she was. In that time she could perform a sweetened jutsu to block the blades to slow them down, jumped out of the way and attacked Yuya. Looking at the woman she gave a nod. You're right, I need to face my fears. The woman seemed to smile at that. And how will you do that? First of all, I'll go back down there and do anything I can to stop that attack from reaching me, I will face it head on. Second, I'll think fast and act fast before she even has the opportunity to save herself. She won't know what hit her, and after all this is over, I don't care where Naruto is, the hospital, his apartment, hell on the street, but I will have with him. She said with a smirk. The woman also chuckled and smiled gently. Very good, I'm glad to see you're not a coward after all. Of course, after all, what Zanpakuto wants a partner who is afraid of dying? She asked rhetorically while the woman's eyes widened. You knew I was your Zanpakuto? She asked in shock. Kurenai chuckled and smiled. Naruto-kun has told me all about Zanpakutos, how when you're about to die they bring you into your mindscape to test you to see if you're worthy of being their new wielder. Oh, and also that whoever wields a Zanpakuto is part Shinigami. I gotta say I expected myself to be part Shinigami. Correct, and you pass, she said with a smile as Kurenai looked shocked. Oh, don't look shocked, it isn't a good look, she said with a smirk while Kurenai spluttered. Anyway, here is your new Zanpakuto, she said as she held out her hand where a katana appeared in it. Looking it over, she noticed how its only decoration is the tsuba, which is a hexagon instead of a rectangle. The two sides parallel to the blade are long, whereas the four sides above and below the blade are shortened, making it into almost a diamond or prism-like shape. It has a green handle. To her it looked beautiful as it seemed to radiate power unlike anything she has ever felt before. Touch the Zanpakuto, and you will know how to wield me, she paused as Kurenai reached over. Oh, by the way, my name is Kyoka Suigetsu. And just like that, Kurenai was gone from her mindscape and back in the real world. Real world. Opening her yes, everything started to come into focus when she felt the katana in her hand. All the information seemed to flood her mind as she grasped the Zanpakuto it tightly before bringing it up to her face and whispered. Kudakaro, Kyoka Suigetsu. Shatter, mirror flower, water moon. Time resumed as normal as the blades of wind flew at Kurenai. It ripped through her, causing her limbs to be blown off, organs to be ripped to shreds and blood to be poured all over the place. Sighing, Yuya shut her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered to herself until she heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw Kurenai stood there with her Zanpakuto, completely unharmed. Sorry about what? Enko and Yugao. Enko looked like a kid in a candy store as she was surrounded by Oto Nin. It was quite a shame they didn't know who they were dealing with, as it looked like they thought she was a useless woman. Oh, how wrong they were. Who to pick? So many choices and yet I can't decide. Enko said with a pout. Yugao, who was stood back to back with her, quirked an eyebrow. What the hell are you talking about? Enko looked over her shoulder at her and smirked. Oh, just which one to kill first? I mean, there's so many, I don't want the others to feel jealous that I didn't want them first. Yugao's eyebrow twitched at that comment. I doubt they care if they were killed first or not. She snapped at her fellow purple-haired friend. Enko shrugged her shoulders. You never know, there may be some here who are masochists, and with them working for Orochi Tem, you could never be too sure. She said casually, making Yugao and the Oto Nin to sweat drop. Getting annoyed, and Oto Nin yelled. For crying out loud, just attack us. Wrong thing to say, because Enko whirled around on him. See, I told you. He's a masochist, she said, grinning triumphantly before she charged forward, kunai in hand, at the one who shouted. Upon reaching him, she jumped dove for him, driving the kunai through his head, destroying his brain as they hit the ground with her on top. Flipping off the now dead shinobi, she ran at another, flipped over him and drove a kunai in the back of his head before jumping off of him and throwing two kunais at two Oto Nin running at them, killing them. As she landed on the ground, she spun around facing a group of 5 shinobi facing her. Time to go, bye-bye boys. Flipping through hand seals, she called out. Kaden, Hisekisho. Spewing a large amount of ask out of her mouth, it drifted over to the enemy, completely encasing them before she grinned, and with a simple clink of the teeth that had a flint on them, and the area exploded in an array of fire and screams as the explosion tore the shinobi apart. On the other side of the field, Yugao was dodging in and out of the hailstorm of kunai and shuriken that was launched at her from a large group of shinobi that tried to hit her. Going through hand seals, she called out. Suiten, Sujinheki. Just by using the moisture in the air, a wall of water was formed right in front of her that started receiving the attacks of kunai and shuriken. She then raised her zanpakuto in front of her and turned it in a circle counterclockwise. While she was turning it, chakra exploded out of her, causing the air to become cold and fog to roll in, as her eyes started to glow an ethereal white. Mei, Soda no Shirayuki. As the dust settled, it revealed her zanpakuto having changed to where the blade, hilt and tsuba turned completely white. The tsuba becomes a hollow snowflake-like circle and a white ribbon forms from the pommel from the end of the handle. Looking up, she noticed how her chakra had caused the water wall to turn to ice, just perfect. Yugao gathered chakra and punctured the ground in front of her, once creating a large ice circle below her feet. Bringing her zanpakuto down again, she punctured the ground 4 more times in a semicircle. Taking a battle stance with Soda no Shirayuki pointing forward, the ice from the wall started to crumble as it was towards the edge of the blade, as well as the ice particles from the protrusions she made in the ground. Tsugi no Mai, Hakurin. A second later, she let it all go in an attack of massive, powerful pure white wave of ice from Soda no Shirayuki's blade. The attack blew past whatever ice had been left from the wall and completely enveloped the field in front of her, encasing all enemy shinobi in their places. Swinging Soda no Shirayuki, once a large slash appeared in the newly formed ice before cracks started to outline from it until it completely shattered, leaving nothing but ice dust left to flow to the ground. Looking ahead, she saw a group of shinobi run at Anko from behind and snarled, stabbing Soda no Shirayuki into the ground. Ice stared to cover the area as she called out, "Juhaku." Ice shot along the ground towards the shinobi, stopping them in place as the ice started to grow up their bodies, causing them to freak out until they were nothing but statues. Taking Soda no Shirayuki from the ground, the people shattered once more. Looking at Anko once more to make sure she was alright, she unprepared to see large white bone sword to be heading straight for her, which she was looking at in wide eyes as it came closer. Using what speed she had left, she ran towards it, even though she knew it was a futile attempt. She wasn't fast enough, she had no jutsu or techniques that would reach it fast enough, she could only hope for a miracle. As Anko watched the bone blade come at her faster, her whole life flashed before her eyes, losing her parents to the Kyuubi attack, becoming a student or Orochimaru, and finally feeling accepted, then the feeling of betrayal as Orochimaru gave her the cursed mark seal, leaving her for dead, being ostracized for the rest of her life, then the good bits, meeting a friend like Kurenai and Yugao, joining Anbu, working with Ibiki, and then Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, her latest topic of discussion. Just as it was about to reach her, Sand came out of nowhere and grabbed the bone blade before throwing it in the opposite direction. Anko turned around to see Gaara. The Kage stood with his arms crossed and a neutral expression on his face before he turned to Anko. "Mitarashi-san, I advise you to get away from here for your own safety. It is now my turn." Anko, despite wanting to protest, but gave in and gave a nod. She knew how he fought and her being in the way didn't suit her fine, although she knew he wouldn't attack a comrade, not anymore thanks to Naruto. Meeting up with Yugao, who looked shocked, she said, "Come on, there's no longer any Oto Nin anywhere." Yugao simply gave a nod and sheathed Soda no Shirayuki. "Right, we should meet up with Naruto-kun," she said before they both ran off. Gaara stared into the forest as if waiting for something before he called out, "Show yourself, Kimimaro Kagaya." A second later, the Kagaya was across from him. "How you survived I don't know, but you will not survive here today," he said, calling up his Sand. Gaara vs. Kimimaro. Kagura looked at Gaara with a small smirk on his face. His mind was filled with nothing but revenge at his last defeat at the hands of this young man who stood before him. "This time I will kill you without fail," Kimimaro said with narrowed eyes. "If you think I will be defeated, then you are mistaken," Gaara said as he stood there. "Enough talk, you will die here today," Kimimaro exclaimed as he lifted both of his hands up and pointed them at Gaara before calling out, "Teshi Senden." Immediately a barrage of what looked like bone bullets fired from his fingers at Gaara. As the bullets came closer to Gaara, his Sand instinctively went to act as a shield in front of him by building a wall, stopping the bullets as they hit it with tremendous force that would usually break it, but thanks to using chakra in the Sand, it has made it more durable. "You'll have to do better than that, Kimimaro Kagura," Gaara said as he placed his hands in a seal. Sabaku Q. Using the sand from the wall, it rushes over to Kimimaro and wraps around his feet, pinning him to the ground while tying his arms in the air to stop him from moving completely. "You think this will stop me?" Kimimaro asked while laughing. Suna Shigur. A cloud of sand then appeared overhead before it starting volley bullet-like bits of sand at Kimimaro. As soon the bullets impacted him they would simply hit his skin and drop down making Gaara frown. Ever since you left me for dead, I had been cured of my illness which now allows me to use my full power. There is nothing that can penetrate my skin anymore, and I am invincible. Kimimaro said with a bit of a manic gleam in his eyes. Whatever happened to him had made him more unstable. I have to stop this as soon as I can. Rendon. Suna Shigur. The sand cloud above expanded to fill a large part of the sky as it rained down bullets on Kimimaro which were now much more dense and sharp, but to no avail once more. Kimimaro getting bored started to sprout him bones. Karamatsu no Mai. Bones sprouted out at every possible place on his body allowing him to cut free of the sand before setting his sights on Gaara who was now getting ready for a real fight. Kimimaro started to charge at Gaara who used his sand to send tendrils at him only to have them knocked away or sliced through. Brining his hands up Gaara called on a large amount of sand only to bring them down, bringing the sand down on Kimimaro as he turned the sand to rock solidifying it in place. To Gaara's surprise however the rocks started getting cracks along them before it shattered revealing an unharmed Kimimaro who just looked annoyed. How many times will I have to tell you that? Me. He said punctuating each word as he started to change by using the cursed seal of earth his skin went from pale white to dark gray, 6 large bone spines protruded out of his back, and grew a long bone-spiked tail. Kimimaro then reached behind his back and pulled out his spinal column and made it into a makeshift spear as he started twirling it around before getting in a stance. Gaara held out his right hand as he gathered what looked like stronger material from the earth making it gather in his hand, just as they started to take shape Gaara said. Saiko Zatai Kogeki, Shukaku no Hoko. The sand then formed a shape of what looked like a large halberd with the end part in the shape of Shukaku's claw. Even if Shukaku isn't sealed within me anymore, he will always be a part of who I am. He said as he brought the spear back behind him also getting in a stance. Both shinobi, the Kage and the last Kage known to man charged at each bringing their weapons down on one another and started an intense duel of staff weapons as they pounded each other relentlessly never letting up. A few minutes later Kimimaro got a lucky shot and swung his spear in an arc and watched as it struck in the cheek causing his skin to break apart only for the spear go right through the head as the entire body fell to sand revealing it to be a Suna Bunshin. Spinning around he just watched in time as the halberd was thrown at him, but believing that it would break apart just stood there, and then watched horrified as it pierced him straight through causing him to revert back to normal while he started to gurgle on his blood and bile rising from his throat. Your arrogance has led to your defeat Kimimaro Kage. Gaara said as walked towards him as sand wrapped around Kimimaro's feet and turned to solid rock keeping him there. How have you done this? It shouldn't be possible. Kimimaro screamed in rage. Gaara just cocked an eyebrow at his anger be shrugging. When I use the jutsu I gather all the strongest materials in the area and bring them together resulting in my halberd. It took some time getting used to using it but I eventually got the hang of it. If you think this will kill me then you are mistaken. I know that won't kill you, but I am not finished yet. Gaara then lifted his hands a bit as sand rose and created a dome around Kimimaro. Going through hand seals Gaara called out. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu. A large fireball blew out of his mouth and made contact with the dome of sand, but instead of the ball exploding, Gaara fed it chakra making it like a flamethrower as the flames started to surround the dome completely. After a minute Gaara stopped the jutsu letting the smoke to move away revealing a now glass dome. Learning some elemental jutsu from Naruto really paid off and saved me some time. This is how you will die. While you may have indestructible bones, what about your internal organs? Gaara asked and watched as Kimimaro's face became horrified. No, you can't do this to me. I must live. I must complete my goals and serve Orochimaru-sama. Kimimaro screamed out in rage and fear. And that is why you will die. Gaara watched as after a minute Kimimaro had ran out of hair and was now choking. By using a Kaden jutsu he had not only turned the sand dome to glass but burned away the oxygen to kill him quicker. Gaara knowing for sure Kimimaro was dead used his power over the earth to grab his body and pulled him into the earth while he broke the dome apart but with more difficulty as he wasn't able to control glass as well as his sand. Seeing the battlefield clear of enemies Gaara walked away. Now to make sure Naruto does what needs to be done for the sake of us all. he said as he vanished into sand which blew in the direction of Naruto and Sasuke. East Gate. Tsunade and Jiraiya vs. Orochimaru. Tsunade sent a punch at Orochimaru who ducked under it, jabbed her waist causing her to flinch from the strength behind it which surprised her. Jiraiya then came at the snake with a kick to ribs which knocked him away, but because of his inhuman flexibility he was able to flip himself up. Don't you see, you two will never win. It has always been this way between us, and it will never change. He said, grinning with bloodlust. Yes, things have changed, Orochimaru. We were teammates, hell even best friends, and you left the village for what? Power. To learn how to become invincible. And at what cost? Your humanity. Your very own sanity. There is no point in even living if you spend it all being alone. Growled out Jiraiya, his temper flaring the more he spoke. You know nothing of the pain I have felt. The pain of losing your parents before your very eyes. Are you serious? I lost my brother and fiancé in the war. I was unable to save either of them, they died in my arms, and you say I don't know pain. I am the only one left of my family. So don't you dare preach to me about loss. Tsunade screamed with anger at having to bring up old memories. I lost the boy I saw as a son at the hands of the Kyuubi as he gave his life away to save the people who would later harm his son. Because of my own selfish actions I let Naruto be harmed and hated by this village, all because I couldn't stand to be here anymore. You're not the only one who knows about pain and loss. Jiraiya said, more subdued, but the anger was still there. Enough. I am tired with talking. Nothing you say will ever change my mind. Now prepare to die. Orochimaru said as went through hand signs. Sane Tajishu. Large snakes shot out from Orochimaru's sleeve heading straight for Jiraiya, who had already got a jutsu to counter. Jiraiya ran at the snakes with his right palm held out as chakra gathered before he thrust his hand forward. Rasengan. The ball of pure chakra tore through the snakes as he carried on running at Orochimaru. To Jiraiya's shock and horror, Orochimaru held out his right hand as dark chakra seemed to gather before forming what looked like the Rasengan with two spinning rings around it. Running at Jiraiya, Orochimaru held out his hand before thrusting forward. Cho Kasaken. Rasengan. Both orbs clashed and grinded against each other, causing chakra to lash out from the output when all of a sudden, boom, both Sannin were flung backwards but recovered easily, landing on both feet. Both looked up and what they saw shocked them as they saw the large crater they had just formed. Jiraiya looked up in shock at Orochimaru's face. What the hell was that? It looked the Rasengan. It was more like a variant version made out of my own rather darker chakra. Orochimaru said with a smirk at seeing the face on his ex-teammate. Is that all you can do? Steal other people's hard work for your own? You're pathetic, you're lower than the scum of this planet. Jiraiya snarled at Orochimaru. Throughout all of this, Orochimaru seemed to have forgotten that was one more Sannin on the playing field, and she was less than happy with the situation she and Jiraiya was in, never mind the whole village. No matter what, they had to win, for the entire village. Running forward at high speed, Tsunade jumped up high into the air above Orochimaru and brought her heel down just as he looked up with wide eyes. Sutenkyaku. Orochimaru barely slithered away as Tsunade's heel hit the ground, causing a large explosion as the ground itself caved in, creating a giant crater while destroying buildings in the vicinity. Tsunade wasn't done, however, as she turned in the snake's direction and punched at the ground with all her strength. Just like before, the ground crumbled under her strength, but this time the ground grew cracks that sped up to Orochimaru's position, where it then split the earth open into a ravine. Orochimaru just barely jumped up in time to dodge the fall. Even in her old age, she hasn't lost an ounce of her strength. I need to be more careful, I'm underestimating them too much, it's time I stopped playing around. As Orochimaru landed back on land, he crouched down low so that his chest touched the floor. Mandara no Jin. Orochimaru then, to the shock of the two Sannin, released a torrent of countless snakes from his mouth, forming a wall of snakes. The snakes started to then rise and rush towards the Hokage and Sage, knocking everything in its path out of the way. The snakes all opened their mouths to extend Kusanagi-like blades. Holy shit, Jiraiya said with a shocked look. What the hell? Tsunade hasped as the torrents of snakes were non-stop. Flipping through hand seals, Jiraiya slammed his hands on the ground. Doden, Yomi Numa. The ground in between him and snakes turned in a large swamp that started to trap the snakes in them, but not enough. They started to plow over it. Once more going through hand seals, he shouted. Kuchio's no jutsu. A large cloud of smoke blanketed the area as Jiraiya and Tsunade were raised from the ground up to about 40 feet, in the air. The smoke soon vanished, revealing the Toad boss Gamabunta. What? Jiraiya, what the hell have you summoned me for now? He demanded with an angry tone as he looked up into the rare serious face of his summoner. Jiraiya simply pointed forward. Konoha is under another invasion by Orochimaru, and we need your help to get rid of those, he said as Gamabunta finally turned to stare at the large group of snakes. Very well, I'll let you off this time, Gamabunta said begrudgingly. Even he knew that Orochimaru was no one to mess about with, and it was time to turn serious. Bunta, give me some oil, Jiraiya ordered. Right, Gamayuden. Gamabunta's cheeks bulged out before shooting a large quantity of oil at snakes while Jiraiya called out his own jutsu. Kaden, Enden, he shouted as he shot stream of fire from his mouth down onto the oil. Kaden, Gamayu Enden. Both voices rung out as the two jutsus combined, creating an inferno of unmatched heat as it rained down on the poor snakes, who screamed out in agony as one by one they were turned to nothing but dead skin on the ground. Tsunade looked at the attack and smirked. That's that taken care of, now I think I should bring out the big guns myself, she said as she jumped from Gamabunta over to the empty space beside him. Kuchio's no jutsu. Placing her hand down on the thin air as if there was something to touch, a large poof signaled the arrival of another summon as the Slug Queen, Katsuyu, appeared in all her glory. Katsuyu, I need your help, we're being invaded by Orochimaru once more, Tsunade told her summon as she landed on her head. I see, then I will lend you my services, Tsunade-sama, Katsuyu said calmly. Thank you, Tsunade said respectively. Orochimaru now stood fully and looked up at the two large summons with hate. I see, so that's how it's gotta be, huh? Going through the same hand seals, he slammed his hands into the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. Once more the signs for a large summon appeared in a large cloud of smoke that obscured Orochimaru's vision before it dissipated, revealing the large purple skin of the King of Snakes, Manda. Orochimaru, how dare you summon me? I should destroy you where you stand, Manda bellowed. Oh, Orochimaru said in an innocent tone. And here I thought you would like the opportunity to finally kill Gamabunta and Katsuyu. Manda looked ahead to see the two large summons. Humph, very well, but I want 100 sacrifices as soon as this over. Orochimaru smirked with maliciousness. Of course, I already have them ready. Gamabunta looked up at Jiraiya with a serious gaze. Where is Naruto? Wouldn't he usually be fighting this guy with you? Gamabunta had always held great respect for Naruto, more so than he held for Jiraiya, had respected him even more after he learnt he held the Rinnegan, as he knew that not just anyone would receive those eyes, but only the person to change the world, for better or worse. Jiraiya looked off to the distance where he could sense the battle between Naruto and Sasuke. He's fighting with Sasuke Uchiha, to the death this time. I see, then we better hurry up so we can help him, Gamabunta said with a serious face as he returned to look at Snake before jumping up and pulling his dagger out. Let's go, Katsuyu. Hi, the Slug Queen replied as they drove forward. Team 8 and Temari. Shikyaku no Jutsu, Kiba called out as he dropped to his fours while his canine teeth and finger and toenails grew to claw-like length, his eyes also become wilder. Jujin Bunshin. Akamaru transformed into a clone of Kiba and jumped on his back in the exact same manner that Kiba was crouched, only he seemed more feral with being a dog in reality. Let's see how you guys like us now, Kiba exclaimed in glee as he saw Oto Nin rushing at him. Gatsuga. Both master and partner jumped high in the air as they started to spin at unbelievable speeds before firing themselves at the enemy in what like a drill tornado. Reaching the enemy forces, the two drill tornadoes tore through the enemy ranks, lowering the numbers the more they went until they stopped by skidding along the ground. Man, these guys are pathetic. Don't speak too soon, dog boy. Temari's voice rung out as she saw more shinobi heading for Kiba. Bringing her fan back, she swung at the enemy. Okamedachi. Temari released heavy air currents that started to collide together to create many vacuum pockets to slash at her targets, which ripped them to shreds. Now that's how it's done. Temari swung around to see shinobi heading for her. Biting her thumb, she started to bleed, which then she used to wipe on the fan before swinging it and calling out, Kuchio's, Kurikiri Mai. Out of then came her summoned weasel Kamatari, a one-eyed sickle-holding weasel. The fan whips up a tempest which Kamatari then rides the wind, slashing through everything it touches. The swirling winds started to rip up trees, boulders, and other forms of debris, as the tempest ran on for several hundred meters, cutting down the enemy who stood helpless on the battlefield. Now that's how it's done, she quipped as she looked at the blood-covered ground that was littered with dead shinobi. Shino, who was facing his own enemies, stared down at them as if he was their lord while he kept his hand in his pockets. It would be foolish if you chose fight me. Why? Because you will not survive once I strike, he said with his monotone voice. Ha! You think you scare us? An Oto nin shouted arrogantly. If that is your decision, very well, Shino said as he lifted his arms out of his pockets while bugs swarmed behind him, freaking everyone out. The bugs from around Shino flew at the enemy who tried to fight them off, but any attempt at doing so was dodged as the bugs just flew around the weapon and jutsus fired at them. The bugs then started to cover the shinobi, completely tapping them by covering every inch of their body. Haijutsu. Mushidama. Slowly and ever so painfully, the bugs fed off of the chakra from the shinobi, slowly killing them for every second that went by, when all of a sudden there was no sound, no cries of pain, nothing. The bugs then seemed to crash into one another before flying away, showing nothing, no bodies, no blood, absolutely nothing. The bugs had completely decimated the person they had a hold of, drinking their chakra and blood, eating everything away. Holding his right hand out to more enemies, he mentally ordered his bugs to attack them as he called out. Kill them, he ordered, and as if understanding, the bugs once more drained the shinobi of everything, and leaving nothing. Hinata stared at her enemies in front of her with nothing but hate, a most unusual thing when it came to the kind and gentle Hinata. Ever since she had started to train hard after Naruto's banishment, she had become a cold person when fighting, very much like Neji, calm, collective, not showing any emotion, perfect when fighting with Byakugan. Now she had to prove to her friends and allies that she is a kunoichi worthy of the title by destroying those who want to kill her friends and destroy her home. Closing her eyes for a second, they snapped open a second later. Byakugan. Veins bulged on the side her eyes as her bloodline was activated for everyone to see. Running slowly at the enemy, she soon sped up until the point that she practically appeared on front of them with Juken strikes to the heats, instantly killing them. Spinning around every once in a while, she repeated the action, slowly lowering the numbers as she moved at a speed that Kiba would be jealous of. Just as she was about to strike once more, an Oto nin shouted out. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu. Quickly turning around, she watched as large fireball was heading her way. Forcing chakra out of all of her chakra points, she started to slowly spin until she called out. Hakusho Kaden. And just like that, a large blue dome of chakra formed around her as she spun so fast she nothing but a blur to everything else. Stopping as the fireball had evaporated, she regained her stance only to see 10 shinobi in front of her. You're in my field of divination, preparing to die. Hake Rokujian Sho. 2 palm. Appearing in front of 2 shinobi, she struck out at their hearts, killing them. 4 palm. Appearing in front of 2 more, she repeated her action. 8 palm. 1 more gone added to the list. 16 palm. Another 3 were dropped as they was hit 16 times. 32 palm. 32 strikes left the poor man like a vegetable as he dropped to the ground. 64 palm. Appearing in front of the last one, she completely decimated him, leaving him for dead as he was blasted back on the last palm strike to the chest. Stopping to catch her breath, she turned to see her team looking at her in shock, awe and respect. All right, Hinata. Kiba cheered on. Most impressive, Hinata, Shino said with a nod. Temari smirked. I knew there was something about you I liked, she said with a chuckle before turning serious. I'm gonna go help Sakura, she looks like she's having a tough time. She while getting nods from all 3. Be careful, Temari-san, Hinata said with a gentle voice while Temari gave her a smirk and left the field. We should head for the direction of Naruto-san, there are no longer any Oto shinobi in the area, Shino said. Right, let's go, Kiba said with enthusiasm. Sakura vs. Fubuki. I thought you died, Sakura said as she eyed her opponent, who she and the rest of team had concluded to be dead. Fubuki smirked, and it was a smirk that freaks the hell out of her. I was left for dead, but I never died. Orochimaru-sama found me and gave me reason to live, gave me I always wanted, power, she said with a grin. And I'm the lucky one to have to face you, Sakura asked with sarcasm. Fubuki frowned in thought for a moment. Well, I had always wanted to get that Uchiha prick back for what he did to me, but he's Orochimaru's toy now, off limits I guess. She said with a shrug. Sakura sighed and pulled her gloves on tighter before getting in a stance. Then I'll finish the job here and now, she said as charged forward aiming a punch for the girl only for her to backflip out of the way. Sakura ended up punching the ground causing it be ripped up from underneath her as rock and rubble was blown sky high. Nice punch, a voice to her right said as she was blown away from a kick to the ribs. But you'll have to do better than that if you intend on beating me. Looking up from her downed position she glared at the smirking pink-haired bitch. Damn it, I underestimated her, I need to stop doing that. Believe me I plan on it. Punching the ground once more rocks were blown upwards obscuring Fubuki's vision of Sakura. Sakura appeared on the left side of Fubuki and kicked her in the side causing her to cry out in pain from the sound of cracked rib. Running after the woman she grabbed her foot and swung her around with all her strength before letting go making the woman be thrown into a building which collapsed on her. Fubuki who was trying to get up groaned as she held her side from the impact that kick had caused, never mind the building on top of her. Damn bitch. As soon as I get out of here I'll kill her good and slow. As she lifted the last heavy bit off of her she stood up and glared at Sakura full of hate. Get ready to die bitch. Going through hand seals the ice user shouted out. Hyoten, Haru Moko. The air around them suddenly got cold as a tiger formed out of ice appeared on the field with yellow glowing eyes. Fubuki then mentally commanded that the tiger attack Sakura which caused it growl before running at amazing speed at the other pink-haired woman ready to tear her limb from limb. Sakura simply stared at the tiger as it got closer while she gathered the necessary chakra in her feet to allow her to use a technique Tsunade had taught her that would eventually become needed, how right she was. Lifting her leg up for a moment she slammed it into the ground. Sutenkyaku. A large formed from the kick which ended up destroying the ice tiger as it shattered from the impact. The explosion also nearly knocked Fubuki off her feet but luckily she jumped back just in time to dodge getting damaged more than she should have. Of course she didn't expect for Sakura to appear in front of her straight away after that and punch her sending her crashing through building and out the other side only to hit a wall. Standing up on shaky legs black marks started to grow over her body while flashing purple every now and then causing her chakra and presence itself to become darker and colder. You have the cursed mark? Sakura asked in disgust from on top of the building that Fubuki crashed through. Yes, I'm going to kill you with. All of a sudden claws grew on her hands and feet while her skin turned a gray purple, her hair changed to a violet color while lengthening. Her eyes turned yellow while horns grew out of the top of her head as her muscles bulged slightly. Running at the building in her new form she punched it, at what shocked Sakura now was the entire building exploded from the strength of Fubuki. Fubuki then appeared in front of Sakura, who had jumped from the explosion, and kicked her in the side throwing her to the ground in a crater. As Fubuki was coming down, she was unable to get to her target as someone shouted. Kamedachi no Jutsu. Wind started to wrap around her before making what looked like a tornado as mini wind blades cut into her skin ripping her apart while her cursed seal healed almost straight away until suddenly she thrown away. Landing in front of Sakura was Temari who helped her up. What are you doing here? Sakura asked confused while she stood up. We finished our guys and you looked like you could use help over here. Temari said with a shrug before looking at the newly recovered Fubuki who stepped closer to them. Well, now I get to kill 2 people, I feel like it's my birthday. Fubuki said with sadistic glee. Gee ya think? Sakura asked sarcastically be carrying on. Can you keep her held in one place for me? Sure. Temari said with a shrug. Fusajin no Jutsu. Temari said she swung her fan which blew dust and sand at Fubuki. Unfortunately for her, this was no offensive jutsu but rather a distraction jutsu as the sand and dirt got into her eyes making her momentarily blind, but it was all the time Sakura needed as she appeared in front of the woman and used all of her strength and kicked her head clean off her shoulders. Ouch! Temari said with a small grimace at seeing a head lobbed off so easily. I didn't like it either. Sakura muttered before shaking her head. We should clean up here and go meet up with Naruto, no doubt their match is getting dangerous. Temari said with some worry. Right, Sakura said with a nod as they both went on their way to finish everyone off before their next destination. West Gate, Kakashi and Guy vs. Kabuto. Kakashi and Guy were stood in a small part of the village while Kabuto was stood across from them with that damn smirk plastered on his face as if he'd already won the fight. Doesn't this all seem familiar to you? Kabuto asked with a chuckle while fixing his glasses. The last you ran away, so if you're going to do that then yeah. Kakashi said with an eye smile. Come on Kakashi, let's take care of this guy quickly so we can help the others. Guy said with a serious look in his eye, already knowing it won't be any easy battle. 8. Kakashi said as he pulled his headband showing his Sharingan for all to see. Flashing through hand seals at near blinding speed he called out. Kaden, Hosenka no Jutsu. Kakashi blew out multiple fireballs that all shot at where Kabuto was, only have him dodge them while the fireballs impacted with the ground creating small explosions. Thanks to his Sharingan and natural reflexes he was able to duck in time for a kick to pass over him. Guy grabbed the leg that was above Kakashi and swung Kabuto into the ground only for the person to turn into mud. Nice show of strength, Kabuto said from on top of a building. But not good and he wasn't able to finish as he soon found a fist planted in his gut courtesy of Guy, which caused him to cough up blood heavily. Guy then launched Kabuto up in the air and followed after him, only kick him in the stomach bringing him back down to earth where Kakashi was waiting for him. As Kabuto came down he was only able to catch the image of a foot before he was sent flipping along the ground. Kabuto, thanks to his advanced healing, was able to pick himself up off the ground rather easily before chakra enveloped both of his hands in a glowing blue. Chakura no Mesu. Kabuto charged at Kakashi and entered a taijutsu match that put Kakashi to his limits. Kakashi, as he was fighting Kabuto in a very dangerous game of taijutsu, couldn't help but feel a slight worry in his gut. One mistake could be his last mistake, as with the chakra scalpels that Kabuto is using could cut an important artery within his body with no problem whatsoever and it would be game over. As Kakashi was just about counter Kabuto, the medic had feinted a slash with his left hand, causing Kakashi to dodge in the other direction where Kabuto's right hand was about to come into contact. Luckily for Kakashi, he has some realizable friends, as Guy appeared in an instant and gave Kabuto an uppercut sending sky high. Are you alright Kakashi? Guy asked in his usual deep voice. Yeah thanks, that was close. Kakashi said as he looked up while going through hand seals and started to gather Raiden chakra in his right hand while his left hand grabbed the wrist of his right. Kakashi then jumped up after Kabuto, intending to kill him. As he came in close, he thrust his arm into Kabuto's stomach. Reikiri, he called out as the lightning struck Kabuto all over his insides, causing the man to scream in pain and agony as his insides were scorched and ripped apart. However, the cry of pain soon changed into a laugh so chilling that it froze Kakashi up to the core. Kabuto looked at Kakashi with a strange gleam in his eye that made Kakashi wonder what the hell was going on. Boom! Kabuto muttered as he blew up, blowing Kakashi away into a building. Kakashi! Guy screamed for his comrade as he jumped towards the building and started to lift Kakashi out of it. Are you alright? He asked once he was pulled out. Kakashi groaned but gave a nod. Yeah, just a little burnt here and there. I must congratulate you Kakashi and you Guy. Kabuto said up ahead of them. Oh really? And what's that? Kakashi asked with sarcasm. No one has pushed me that far before other than Orochimaru-sama and Naruto-kun. But, I must take my leave right about now. You're not going anyway, Hai said as he was about to after him. You'll find that I am. Kabuto said with a smirk before vanishing. Damn it. Kakashi swore angrily. Come on, the others need our help. Guy said as he got a nod before they ran to help the others. Team Guy. Hakusho Kaden. Neji exclaimed as he used his clan's most prized jutsu, the ultimate defense, in order to knock the enemy away that had surrounded him, leaving them dead or knocked out. Running forward he struck every shinobi that came in view, and with someone who has the Byakugan and can see for miles, it was a lot of people. Spotting two shinobi about use jutsu he ran at them and thrust his palms out. Hake Kusho. Two vacuums of compressed air shout from Neji's palms, hitting the targets in the chest, blasting them against a wall, killing them by snapping their backs. These are weak and unworthy of even living, Neji said with a cold glare at the other shinobi. Even if we die, Orochimaru-sama will be the one who will destroy this pitiful village. An Oto Nin shouted. Oh really, and what makes you think he will even survive? Because he is a god, and no god can be killed. Another shouted. Neji shook his head at the man's stupidity. Even if he was a god, gods are always defeated by someone stronger. he said before he went into a stance ready to butcher the remaining shinobi he has to face. Hake Hyaku Nyuhachi Sho. The enemy forces didn't stand a chance. 128 direct hits in all of their chakra points completely decimated them to be nothing more than limp bodies dead all over the village by the time he had finished. Should there ever be a god, I would put my money on Naruto-san, he said before going off to help everyone else. Neji had just arrived to the others to see Tenten slaughtering the enemy with all her assortments of weapons within her scrolls, and it looked like she a large smile on her face, enjoying what was happening. Tenten placed 2 small scrolls in the floor and placed her hands on them while saying, Kai. A second later and the 2 scrolls release smoke while also being sent flying and spinning into the air in the shape of 2 dragons made of smoke. So sure you. Tenten then jumped between the 2 scrolls, and starts to rapidly summon and throw all sort of weapons as a powerful barrage at the enemy below her who started to try and run away from the rain of weapons only for the all to fall to their deaths as explosive tags were attached to some weapons exploded on impact covering the area in a plume of smoke. As Tenten landed back on ground Neji smiled at her. Nice work Tenten. Tenten blushed at the praise before nodding and looking around. Where's Lee? They got their answer in a flash of green and shout of Konoha Senpu. The guy Lee faced didn't stand a chance, a couple well-placed quick kicks to the chest and another to the face complexly wiped him out. Lee then moved on to the next guy, and the next guy and so on and son before Neji or Tenten could even blink. Konoha Shofu. Lee slid underneath someone and kicked up with foot connecting with the guy's chin sending up to which he followed up into the air with Konoha Goriki Senpu. Lee then proceeded to beat the hell out of the guy before sending a kick to his face sending him back to the ground, breaking his neck. Landing back on ground he noticed Neji and Tenten watching him. Neji. Ten. Isn't this a perfect time to show these Oto nin what it's like to share the springtime of youth? He shouted enthusiastically with a pumping fist and fire in his eyes. If he keeps doing that we won't need to fight. Tenten whispered to Neji as she noticed some shinobi backing away and trying to flee from the green beast. I think you're right. However, just as the shinobi was gonna flee they were suddenly encased in what looked like purple crystals. Shoten. Amawatari no Jutsu. Looking at the shout they noticed a woman with blue spiky hair stamping the floor which caused pink crystals to shoot along it encasing the shinobi in crystal before shattering. Weak fools, you don't deserve to survive if you plan on running away, she said without emotion while turning to Team Guy. Let me guess, Tenten started. You work for Orochimaru, only people who work for him would kill their subordinates. My name is Gurren, and yes I work for Orochimaru-sama, but they were not my subordinates, they were weak-minded fools who would run away from someone who is very strange indeed. She muttered finally seeing Lee before shaking her head. So you're a Shoten user as well huh? Neji asked with a raised eyebrow. As well. There is only one who can use it. Me. Gurren said angrily at this person who made it sound like more people could use it. Wrong. There is a friend of ours who can sue it. But I'm sure Orochimaru told you that right. I mean he wouldn't lie to you would he? Especially when this person is fighting Sasuke Uchiha right now. Tenten said with a smirk on her face. Gurren's eyes widened at hearing that as she always wanted to find someone who could use her bloodline. But she was never able to as Orochimaru said she was the last of kind who could which practically made her his weapon of sorts. At first she didn't mind working for him it gave her a purpose a reason to live, but over time she started to get tired of it all, just killing for no reason whatsoever. But if what they say is true, then maybe, just maybe there is someone who can make her feel like someone who actually deserves to live, and she had heard a lot about the Namikaze, about his strength, his connections to the Raikage and Mizukage. She knew if he wanted to, he could probably start the next great war, and win, with all of his connections. And yet he doesn't because he didn't need to, he doesn't want to, unlike a certain snake. Looking at the 3 faces she said. Take me to him. If what you say is true then I want to see for my own eyes. Very well. Neji said as they all set off in Naruto's direction. Team 10 and Kankuro. Buben Baika no Jutsu. Choji exclaimed as his fist enlarged to about 4 times the size as he brought it down on an Oto nin killing him instantly. Lifting his arm back up it returned to normal size as he saw the flattened shinobi beneath him. Running forward he jumped up while shouting. Baika no Jutsu. Once he shouted it his body turned into a large ball before he then shouted. Nikuden Sensha. As soon as he touched the ground he started to spin into a large ball, crushing his enemies as he roared forward. Deciding to cause more damage, he called out, Nikuden Hari Sensha. Spike jutted out from his body all the way round, causing more damage towards the enemy before he came to a stop. That was too easy, he said with a smile before rushing to his teammates. Shikamaru stood in front of 3 shinobi and smirked before putting his hands in a seal, Kage Nui no Jutsu. His shadow stretched out from under him at quick speed until strings of shadow shot up from the ground and struck the shinobi before they knew what happened. Seeing more enemies ahead, he once placed his hands in a seal. Kagemain no Jutsu. Multiple strings of shadow burst from his own, heading straight for all the shinobi, stopping them in their tracks. These guys are pathetic. It looks like only Orochimaru, Kabuto and Sasuke were the main force, and everyone else is nothing more than cannon fodder. What are they really after? He asked himself before shaking his head and was about to take care of his captured shinobi when he heard Cho Harite. 2 gigantic palms slammed down on the shinobi, instantly killing them. Nice work Choji, good timing as well. Choji smirked as he started to shrink down to normal size. Thanks. Akahigi, Kiki Senkuku. They both turned around to see Kankuro using the body of Sasori that Sakura had beaten with the help of Elder Chiyo. Its head had been detached from the body while holding their palms out as knives with paper bombs attached to them shot out from Sasori's palms and neck, killing enemy shinobi in the large explosions from them. Well, that takes care of that, Kankuro said as he came by Shikamaru and Choji. Where's Ino? He asked, looking around. She's over th. Shikamaru paused as he watched Ino fight off her own enemy shinobi with just her tanto. Ino was using her nimble body and natural flexibility to help her by jumping from shinobi to shinobi, killing them with ease with swift strikes to various parts of the body. Jumping over to another kicked him in the legs, flipping him over so that his hack landed on the ground and stabbed him in the art. Back flipping from her position, she flipped 2 kunai out and flung them at more shinobi coming after her. Turning around, she watched as 2 shinobi were about to reach her when they just stopped while looking confused. Looking around, she saw Shikamaru with his hand in a sign and a smirk on his face. I didn't know you were such a good fighter, Ino. I've been training hard. She paused so that she could take out the frozen shinobi. Ever since 4 years ago I started to train harder, to help Naruto. And then when he came back and shown all of us at the level he was at, I chose to do something about it and pushed myself to above my limits. She said with a smile. Shikamaru chuckled and shook his head. It seems like no matter what he does, that troublesome blonde always makes us want to better ourselves. He said with a chuckle. That's Naruto for ya, Ino said with a chuckle. Choji nodded in agreement and looked around to see no one left. We should go meet up with Naruto and Sasuke, I can feel their fight from over here. He said with a serious look. Right, let's go. If we're lucky nothing too bad will happen, Shikamaru said with a sigh as they took off. Hopefully nothing too bad will happen. That's the end of part 3. Naruto has stopped running, now the world must decide whether to kneel or burn. If you enjoyed this part, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Fox Fanfiction. Comment, part 4 inches if you want to see Naruto's power shake the 5 great nations.